Hey scrappers, if you're looking to figure out what materials you should sell this week or hold this week, now is the time to do it. Our weekly report is going to give you that information, up-to-date market news, pricing. Let's get right into it and we'll talk about it inside. Hey scrappers, Tom here, and today is Wednesday, December 13th, 2023. We hope you're doing well, getting ready for Christmas and the holiday season, and you're enjoying some of these prices that have been jumping up. Just a reminder, we have our live, update today, and next week we're going to do it again. We're going to take a week off between Christmas and New Year's, and that's when we're going to do our 2023 recaps and our 2024 previews, talking about aluminum, brass, copper, steel, catalytic converters. So if there's something that you want me to talk about specifically, maybe how prices are going to be affected next year or things like that, please comment below. We read these comments and we integrate them into the weekly reports. This way we really know what's going on. Before I kind of hop into the report, if you're looking for that last minute Christmas gift, don't look any further, because the iScrap app has all types of things that you can buy, whether it's a magnet, a t-shirt, a phone case, a high visibility jacket. Check out our shop. You can see all those things, get them sent right to you. We have sizes from small to big boy size. So if you're looking for those double X's or triple X's, we can take care of those as well. We got them all in there. Let's go right into things. Copper, week over week has been up about 1%, right? So that's only a few cents a pound. But if we look at some of the reported prices that we've seen for copper in the last week or so, you're going to see this 30-day moving average continuing to trend upward. Now, we'll talk more in a few weeks about where I think the markets are going in 2024, but I am very pleasantly surprised in how the increase has been. If you can see here, we have a 9% 30-day increase. We have a 305 number for reported national prices right now. And you can see some of the prices, 327, 318, 320. These are really strong numbers, and they're being reported just in the last few days. So going into the Christmas season, it's nice to see these price increases. There's not a real factor that went into these. The only thing that I could really lead to and point to is fuel prices decreasing. We've seen oil prices dropping below $70 a barrel. And since August, we've seen gasoline prices dropping 70 cents a gallon at the pump nationally. So those decreased transportation costs have increased some of the copper prices. So that is a bit of a direct correlation, but the demand for copper hasn't drastically increased because we haven't seen worldwide consumption drastically increase. We talked over the last few weeks about some of the mines in Peru and Chile and how they're not really tapping into them right now. And until we see a real green evolution where clean energy is being really integrated and not kind of shoved down our throats the way it's been, we're going to see a slow transition that's going to consume a lot of amount of copper. Yesterday, there was a vote, one of these summits, these worldwide summits, and they were just talking about greenhouse emissions and carbon capture and carbon fuel. And they were saying how they want to be able to eliminate fossil fuels in, the next 50 to 60 years. Sure, that's a great, goal to be able to have. And if that does continue in that trend, we are going to see that consumption for copper really increasing. And it's going to be nice because sometimes there's trade-offs. For years we had copper inside of telephone wires, internet wires, right? And then they kind of migrated over to plastic and to fiber optics. So that eliminated one need for copper. You look at something like lead, where lead acid batteries are being eliminated from the car industry, but they're not being reintegrated anywhere else. So it's nice to see that the copper is going to be reintegrated into these clean energy initiatives, whether they're wind, solar, or other types of forms. We've seen the ocean waves where they try to use the ocean to capture energy. So you're going to see some of these transmission lines, some of these backups. You're going to see more copper being consumed. And I'm not just talking about car chargers. Car chargers and charging stations, yeah, they're going to need some copper, but a lot of those stations are going to be powered by aluminum because of the amount of current that's going to be needed isn't going to be as heavy or as industrial as, say, the power going to a a building or a commercial complex or things like that. So the copper demand is going to be continuing to increase, and we can see some of these prices right in front of us here. If we pull some of these up again, number one tubing, 290, number two, 274. You have ACRs, $1.53. These are really strong prices month over month with these increases, 7 to 10% on average. So we're happy to see those. And it would not surprise me going into Christmas, and definitely that week between Christmas and New Year's, to start to see some of these prices kind of coming back a little bit. Traders, companies shutting down for the holidays, a lot less tradings going on, and copper's become a traded commodity just like oil or different stocks. So if people aren't active that week because of holidays, vacations, etc., well, you're going to see a slowdown in trading. So it wouldn't shock me to see a little bit of a pullback towards the end of the year and going into January until things really ramp up again second half of the first quarter. But these are things that we're looking at. One thing that we did see, gold prices were down over 2%. That was for a couple of different reasons. One of the reasons is because they're expecting the Federal Reserve in the second quarter of next year to start to pull back some of the interest rates. So what does that mean? They think that inflation has been tamped down. That means that they're going to be able to start to rescind some of those rate increases, and gold prices were affected by that. And you can see here, we have gold prices right around $2,000 an ounce. And Virginia, if we could click, you got the 1 year up, we're right around the high point that we've seen in the last year. We've seen it cross over $2,000 an ounce just a couple of times. But for those of you e-scrappers out there, motherboards, hard drives, things containing gold, seeing these prices at these levels that we've seen, and let's even go to a 5-year level, it's just going to give you an idea where the markets are. So you can see all the way back to July of 2020, we're touching the prices where they were then. And don't forget, back in 2020, that was a lot of fear mongering and a lot of people putting money into a place that they thought was safe. So to see these prices going to really all-time highs. Now, inflation, not being said, you can't always gauge it that way. We're seeing $2,000 an ounce, and I don't see that coming down anytime going into next year, especially as we see things like semiconductor chips taking shape. We see the Chips Reform Act from Congress and the Senate from over a year ago starting to be put into fruition to start manufacturing chips here in the country. So gold and platinum and other high-value metals are going to be needed. So that's going to help push up some of these prices going into 2024, and I fully expect those markets to increase. Now, on the catalytic converter side of things, while we talk about gold in one breath and prices going up, platinum, palladium, and rhodium, not nearly as good. Platinum up 3% week over week, palladium up 1%, rhodium down 2.5%, and our average pricing for catalytic converters remains in the $70 range. If you can see here, national price average $74 for an OEM cat right now. But for those of you that have maybe been a little weary of our cats or not looking to sell because the markets have dipped down so much, in December we have a 10% price boost for first-time customers. And if you want to use PayPal, any transactions over $200, we're waiving the fees. And then there's more. There's always free shipping on all OEM catalytic converters. So the team over at rrcats.com, we're watching these markets, and because of the energy transition that we kind of talked about, platinum, palladium, and rhodium are going to be used more heavily, but they're not going to be used in the auto sector. Where we're going to start seeing those used is in that carbon capture area from greenhouse emissions, power plants, natural gas power units, things like that, where we can't just wean the energy industry off quickly. It has to be a slow transition. So using some of these metals to help offset the dioxides and the carbon going into the atmosphere, that's going to really help the markets in 2024. The auto sector did have a little bit of a pickup after the strike was over, but overall, I really don't see a huge market for catalytic converters. I've talked to multiple people in the last few weeks that are holding hundreds, if not thousands of cats, hoping for those prices to rebound to the quarter one levels that we saw this year. I just don't see that happening anytime soon. Cat prices averaging over $100 would take an increase of the markets of about 15% per metal. And that just isn't going to be something that's going to be happening. When we saw the war in Ukraine and Russia happening in 2022 when it started, we did see that quick price spike. But since then, really, they haven't seen a lack of supply, which means the prices have been pushed down over that time period. So that little bubble for the catalytic converter prices seems to be here and gone, and we're back to regular markets moving forward. So I really don't see much movement going from there. Now, I'm going to talk about steel for a little while, and I mentioned this in the weekly report. I have never been an advocate of holding on to steel, whether it's a demo project, whether it's small time steel that you pick up on the curb, whether it's regular accounts that you have. Selling steel is one of those things that it just makes sense because you can never really make that much more money. And let me give you an idea. If you had 5,000 pounds of steel, and let's pull up the national price for light iron right now. Our national light iron price is around 150 bucks, right? 150 a ton. If you had 5,000 pounds, just say it's 2.5 tons, you're looking at what? $425. Now, for you to go from $425 to $850, we would have to see steel prices double. And I don't think that you're going to make that much extra money because steel prices aren't going to double overnight. I mean, the increase we've seen over the last 30 days has been really nice, and we've seen steel prices on the upward trend, but we're not going to see them doubling anytime soon. Maybe slowly we'll get there from the all-time lows in 2024. We do expect an increase in steel demand, but prices right now are going up because gas and oil prices are going down. So if we see the transportation sector continuing to decrease, we will see some of those prices increasing. And one of the most important things that I look for is domestic demand, meaning demand here in the United States, what materials staying here versus export. So if Turkey and other countries like India are looking for large amounts of steel, we may see some of the domestic prices pushing themselves up. But what happened the last 2 months was a lot of companies were selling export. The domestic markets were not getting as much high-grade steel, and we started to see the domestic prices pushing themselves up, which is one of the reasons we're seeing some of these price jumps here. So you're seeing 156 on average for shred. If we can go back to some of the higher grades, maybe an unprepared number 1 or heavy steel right on the top there, heavy melt and steel 225 a ton. Those are some strong numbers, and I do think that these numbers are going to continue going up. I've seen some prices as high as 270 recently. So if you have any prices, don't forget to report them through the iScrap app so you always have a gauge and your thumbprint on what's going on with the market. It gives you a better feel, and this is just going to help you really expand your own knowledge. And going into 2024, if you want to learn anything, you need to learn that all of these things are interconnected. Gold prices, steel prices, oil prices, copper prices, overall demand worldwide, they're all tied to the strength of the consumer. And right now we're seeing the strength of the consumer a little weaker. So if we start to see inflation numbers pushing themselves down going into 2024, I can see some of these steel prices and other markets having a real nice increase. Now, over the last week, I'm just reading some of the notes. We've talked about light iron prices, and we talked about some of the sealed units and the compressors. Some people were just asking where we stand on taking apart sealed units for scrap and going after the copper. So my personal opinion is we don't do it at Rockaway Recycling. I have never asked my employees, except for a how-to tutorial video, to cut compressors apart. The amount of steel inside doesn't offset the labor, and it's something that's better gone through a shredder to separate or kind of pushed overseas, but it's not an item that I would take apart. A couple of reasons why. Oil residue, if you start to cut the copper off, you're going to have oil. Maybe it could act as a lubricant, but it also could ignite and give you some type of problems. If the compressors aren't fully drained, the oil will go all over the place, environmental hazard over your clothes, your gloves, etc. So we really suggest having those sealed units drained, selling them to the scrapyard, making sure the ends are crimped so no residual oil drips out, but it is definitely not an item that I would suggest taking apart. I would much rather take an electric motor apart or a transformer apart, which of course we have videos on those on YouTube, than even touching anything to do with sealed units. So let's see, a lot of people are talking about incomplete car prices. So incomplete car prices have gone up. We talked about that with the light iron prices. So we have seen those incomplete or complete car prices going up. One thing to keep in mind, if you do recycle, cars regularly, you want to make sure that you're cutting that cat off ahead of time, because many times the scrapyard doesn't give you anywhere near what that cat would be worth in the extra price for steel. So just something to look out for. Aluminum markets, again, we'll kind of wrap up with this. Really, they're down 0.5% week over week. We'll pull up aluminum prices right now. I don't see a large increase coming going into January. We've seen a little price movement. If we go down to sheet aluminum, it gives us kind of a bellwether of where the markets are. It's right here, sheet 45 cents. So we have seen that price increase. You can see here 40, 50, 41, 40, 30, 40 cents a pound. So those price increases have helped the sheet market. But overall, I mean, these markets are just kind of flatlined over the last few months, and that's what I see moving forward going into 2024, and we'll talk about that in a couple of weeks. Scrappers, today is Wednesday, December 13th, 2023. We appreciate you tuning in. Ask us any other questions. Tell us what you want us to talk about in our last live weekly report next week. And until then, Scrappers, I'm Tom, and I'll scrap you later.
Thanks for watching our video. For $2.99 a month, by becoming a member, you can get access to early videos, member-only videos, merchandise discounts from our store, and priority comments that we answer before answering any other scrappers. Click the link below to learn more. Until next time, scrap you later.